Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited to see you all. And hopefully, we will get started here in just a moment. My name is Alex Marga, and I am the Director of Customer Success here at Playbook UX. And joining us in our chat is our support team who'll be answering any questions throughout the webinar. So please feel free to drop us a line at any time. Just a couple housekeeping things out of the way at the beginning here. We will be sending a link to this after the webinar is completed, so feel free to check your inbox for a copy of this meeting. And we're also going to be uploading this meeting to our YouTube page. So if you search Playbook UX on YouTube, you'll be able to see this webinar as well as our previous webinar and any awesome videos that we post there. So I highly recommend checking it out and sharing with your colleagues if you like. I'm so excited to talk to you today about card sorting. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into it. I'm going to switch my screen and ask just to make sure everybody can hear me. If somebody in the chat can just let me know. Hello. So, I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off, but can everybody still hear me okay? If somebody in the chat is able to let me know, that would be lovely. Awesome. Great. Okay, perfect. Awesome. So, today we're going to be talking about how card sorting can help you make meaningful changes to the flow of your website. So, first, we're going to talk about information architecture and navigation and why using a card sort can be helpful for that, what different types of card sorts you can run. And then we'll also build a card sort together and we'll analyze a completed card sort here at the end. And I just realized I forgot to send that to stream. Can you still hear me okay, everybody? Thank you. Sorry again, everyone. Awesome. So here is our agenda. And at the very end, we're going to be analyzing some card sorts as well as building our own card sort. And we'll also talk about some alternate utilizations that I've seen other researchers use, as well as a Q&A here at the end. So first, we're going to go ahead and talk about information architecture and navigation. So, for those of you who may be new to information architecture, IA as I like to call it, or need a refresher, IA is sort of like the skeleton of a website. When and where do you show a person a certain piece of content that you're trying to provide them? Giving the user all of the content all at once can be very overwhelming, but it can also be difficult for a user to go through multiple submenus to find the thing that they're looking for. So, part of the process is building a sitemap where you list out every web page and how it connects to each other. And the other part of the process is building a great navigation system, which helps make your website more usable. However, that is just one part of it. When a user visits your website, they don't want to just click around to find the things that they need. They want to find what they're looking for right away. So, according to the Nielsen Norman Group, users leave many sites feeling that the content and functionality was not what they wanted, and they experience friction because of poor organization, structure, and/or nomenclature. Ideally, you want users to find the content they need with the fewest amount of clicks, and improving IA helps make the navigation more intuitive to achieve that goal. Investing time in making sure your site navigation is easy to understand and fluid with your content can ensure you are retaining users as they scroll through your site. But how do you determine if your navigation works or your content is easy to find? This is where user research can come really in handy here. So, you can always run more qualitative studies to get in depth on how a person is thinking and doing the motions. These are very frequently done with unmoderated and moderated studies. But one of the easiest ways to get a sort of top down view of your audience is by running a quantitative study like a card sort. A card sort is an exercise where you will ask participants to sort a list of things, which we call cards, into either predetermined categories or categories that they create. This is a great exercise to run while you are building or revamping your navigation flow and can also be helpful when you want to test if your site is already organized correctly. A successful card sort should give you insight into how your participants are thinking and interacting with the content you're providing. By doing this exercise, you can notice patterns and make changes by analyzing where items are most frequently sorted and can give you a great launching off point to start on your navigation design flow. So, there are actually three different versions of a card sort study that you can run, and each are helpful in different ways. So, the first one we're going to talk about is an open card sort. In this test, you put the control into the hands of the participants completely. They'll both create the categories themselves and then sort the cards into those categories. So, this test is really great for designers wanting to start from scratch. And I usually recommend doing this early in the design process, as this will give you sort of a baseline of how users organize your content. Even with participants giving their unique perspective on each category and oftentimes naming them their own terms, it is not surprising to see similarities come up throughout the results. The second is a closed card sort. So, in this test, you take more control by listing predetermined categories and asking participants to sort into them. Often, I see researchers use this type of test later in the stages of the development process when they have the categories determined, but want to ensure the users are on the same page. Other researchers like to use this type of test to find improvements that can be made in a current navigation flow. So there's a tons of different ways that you can implement closed card sorts in your research, and we'll also talk about ways that people use closed card sorts in without the navigation flow. Finally, the third is a hybrid card sort. So, in this test, the researcher defines the cards in categories, but allows the participant to create categories if they need to. As a sort of Goldilocks option, this type of card sort is great in all different stages of the design process. As you come up with new ideas for a new navigation flow early in development, you can see how users react to your created categories while allowing outside the box solutions. If you are later in the design phase, you can utilize a hybrid to test if your categories are working as intended or if there are any changes to be made. So now that we know about the three different types, we can begin to work on building our card sort. One quick note before we move forward: the number of participants you want to recruit for a card sort is going to be a lot more than you would recruit for a moderated or unmoderated study. Since we're looking for more of a general overview of how participants move through the study, we want to collect a lot of data versus more quality answers. So, for a card sort, the industry standard is roughly between 15 to 30 participants. So, let's build a card sort together. Let's say I'm an electronic retailer and I want to start selling different electronics online. I want my navigation to be easy to find all the things people want, and I have a general idea of where someone might find some of the more common items I sell, but I'm still not quite sure about some of the least frequently sold items. So, really quickly, as I get prepped on the other screen here, I am going to go ahead and launch a poll here. So, my question to you is, what type of card sort would I choose? And go ahead and choose the answer on the screen directly. And we'll be momentarily switching screens here in a second. Perfect. So, let's go ahead and switch gears here. All right. Can everybody see my screen okay? Let's see here. Actually, it doesn't look like it. There we go. Can you see my screen okay now? Alrighty, perfect. I see the confirmation there. Perfect. Thank you, Lindsay. Awesome. So, if you didn't get a chance to answer in the poll there, that is okay. We're going to talk about it in just a second. But first, let's go ahead and get the bones of our card sort set up. So, you can see currently I'm in my workspace here. So, I'll go ahead and click New Project and then click on card sort. Now, before I select card sort, I do want to point out that a regular card sort here is not going to be screen recorded, video recorded, or audio recorded like an unmoderated or moderated study. That being said, some researchers do like to run a card sort within an unmoderated study or moderated session so they can ask questions and see how the participant works through the exercise in real time. And that is definitely something that you can set up. If you are interested in setting up a card sort within an unmoderated or moderated study, feel free to reach out to our team and we're happy to provide more information on how to get that set up. For today, we're just going to go ahead and set up a card sort just like you would for just the exercise. So we'll go ahead and click create here. And next, I'll go ahead and give my test a title and a description for just me and my colleagues to see. So we'll call this the electronics retail card sort. If I want to provide a description, I'm more than happy to do so. However, in this case, I'll just leave it blank. Next, you'll want to choose who you want to get feedback from. We do offer the Playbook UX participants panel for card sorting. And with this, you can choose different demographic breakdowns. You can also include screener questions to really find the audience that you're looking for. Or you can also bring your own participants for this study. So for this case, I'm going to go ahead and choose my participants. And you'll notice that if you've used Playbook UX before, you may notice that there is a section missing, which is for devices like desktop computers, phones, and tablets. For this exercise, because it is a actual test for a participant to take, we do require it to be taken on a desktop computer. So that option is automatically selected. So we'll go ahead and click next here to go to the next page. And I'll go ahead and select the amount of participants that I want to. So for this study, I'll go ahead and choose 25 participants. And you can include qualifying questions if you're bringing your own participants. If you are sending it out to like a wider audience, you can include screener questions. But for this, I'll go ahead and leave that blank. So now we get to the fun part, which is actually building the card sort. So in the poll, I had asked what kind of card sort should I choose for the particular scenario I chose. And just as a reminder, that is an electronics store owner wanting to sell items online with an idea for some of the popular items, but not quite sure about the less popular items. In this case, and I believe everybody chose the correct option, I would go ahead and go with a hybrid card sort just because I have some idea of the different categories that I want to choose from and maybe want to leave it open for interpretation for the others. I do think an open card sort would also be okay in this case. So you could get a good baseline by allowing your participants to choose the categories themselves, but I think a hybrid in this case will also work. So now that I've chosen what type of card sort, I'm going to go ahead and start creating my cards. Now, you'll notice that I can include a few different fields here. We have a card name, a tooltip description, which is just an optional description to for more complicated items, and then an image if I want to also include an image there. Now, these are optional. The tooltip description and image are optional, but we do require a name for a card. So we'll go ahead and start entering some card names here. So let's say laptop, gaming PC, iPhone, Amazon Echo. I'm going to enter some of these right now. But as I'm entering these in, you may have a question, which is how many cards are too many cards? And that's a great question. So we usually start to see fatigue after about 25 to 30 cards, and we start to see drop off at that point. So usually I recommend staying below that number. This will make sure that your participants are kind of participating in the exercise to the best of their abilities without having that kind of rush at the end to move everything over so they can complete the test a little quicker. So let me go ahead and enter these. It'll be just a moment here. Put in an office chair. So these are just some of the frequently used items for my customer here. Uh, and we'll also include headphones. Let's see here. Okay, Perfect. So now that I have my cards entered, I'm going to go ahead and include some images for some of these cards. I very occasionally researchers will like to just put out the cards themselves. It leaves it very open for interpretation if you have like very specific items that maybe participants don't actually know what those items are. Some researchers like to include pictures as a way to kind of have a visual indication of what that item is. So for in this case, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I have some images I already have on my computer here. So I'll make sure to upload them. So we'll put in a gaming PC image. And these are great for different items that might be a little unclear and maybe have a need for being more visual. So let's include AirPods. And you'll also notice I'm not uploading an image for every single item here, and that's okay. You can have a mix of both cards without images and cards with images in your study as well. Okay, perfect. There we go. So I have a few cards with images for things that are a little bit unclear, and I have my cards without that are a little more clear. So we can start to build our categories here in just a moment. However, I do want to point out some of the card sort settings here on the right, which are going to be very important for your study as well. So a lot of these settings, as you can see, are for things involved in the UI here. So if I want to turn off, for example, I don't want to use tooltip descriptions, I can X that out. If I don't wanna do images, I can also X that out, but I wanna call your attention to the top 2, which is randomized cards and randomized categories. These to me are the most important parts of a study, and I almost always err on the side of checking these 2 boxes. By checking these boxes, our system will automatically shuffle the cards and categories for each participant, so no user will get the same order as another. And the reason I do this is because it can help reduce bias. If I keep the same cards in the same order for each participant and I include 15 to 20 cards, I run the risk that those last few cards will fall victim to being sorted without much thought as the user gets closer and closer to fatigue. So by shuffling, I can ensure that all cards get a fair chance amongst all the participants. So I'm going to go ahead and choose those 2 options automatically, and we can start building out our categories at this time. Okay, so like I said before, I have kind of an idea for some of the more popular items listed here. So I'm just going to put those in. We'll say TVs, computers, phones, and video games. For example, I know these off the top of my head are areas that people will want to go to. But then I have a lot of items on my list that I'm not quite sure about. And the most important thing is I don't want to include a catch all, like something very vague, like accessories or not sure, because that really isn't particularly helpful with my research in my data if users decide to put everything into that category. So the more specific I can get with my categories, then better my research will be to kind of see where people sort things. I can include more detailed categories like, for example, laptop accessories or audio equipment or something like that. But I also think there's value in leaving it pretty open, especially since we're doing a hybrid card sort. We're going to allow for more creation of those categories. So I'm just going to include the 4 that I know and leave the rest open for interpretation. So at this point, I do think we have enough to move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. And before I send this card sort out to my participants, I might want to give them a brief introduction or some additional context to lead up to the test. Now, Playbook UX actually automatically has a welcome screen, instructions, and closing stream ready to go for you. So if you don't want to include those automatically, these will be here for you. But you can always edit these to include more information about your business, about the card sort itself, and things like that if you like. Personally, I think this is totally fine as is. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. And you'll be given the opportunity to double check and make sure your research looks great. I have my instructions here, my cards, and my categories, so I can all double check those things. And when I'm ready to go, I can go ahead and click submit. Now, before I do that, I do want to show you what it looks like from a participant side. So let's take a look at what a test would look like if you were a participant. Awesome. So, as a participant, you'll first be reaching this welcome page here, and you can go ahead and proceed to the study. They'll also be shown those instructions right away, so they'll be able to read those instructions, click OK, I'm ready, and they can also access the instructions at a later time if they need to as well. But you'll see here that my cards are gonna be on the left-hand side, and you'll notice that they are in a, sorted order just because we clicked those 2 boxes, and then my categories here will be at the top. Now you'll notice that there's one that says "Add a group," so this is where our participants can create a category as well. So I'll go ahead and get started with the ones I know for sure. So for example, iPhone, I'm going to scroll this over to phones. Nintendo Switch, I'm going to put into video games. TV, I've got my TV here. However, now I'm starting to come to items that I'm not quite sure about. And so this is where we can have our participants create the categories. We'll say, let's say Beats headphones. That's one I know for sure. And it's not a category listed here. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag it over to add a group and change the name to headphones. Now, as a participant, I've created a category for myself. Maybe for Amazon Echo, that's something that I would find in my household. So I can click add a group, click to add a name, and put in household, for example. So I'm going to put my Amazon Echo there. That's something that's kind of for my home. So that feels like it feels correct here. We've got Ethernet cables and HDMI cords. These things I'm not quite sure about. So maybe as a participant, I'm going to put in the word cords. That kinda seems like those go together, so I can put those both in the same category, and then I've got my gaming PC for computers. AirPods can go into my headphones category, laptop can go into computers, and then office chair is kind of a funky one as well. It could go into household, but maybe I'll drag it over to my new category and create one that just says furniture. And now I've sorted all of my cards and I am completed with my study. That is how easy it is to do a card sort from a participant's perspective. So, this is a great way to see how somebody will go through the flow and make those choices based off of things that they're instinctually feeling in the sorting of your items and content on the website. I'll go ahead and click submit here. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is I will copy and paste this here into the chat. So feel free to take this card sort if you like or share it with your team. We'll keep this open until we reach that limit of participants on the page there. However, after this event is over, I will also provide the link out in an email as well as the analytics once that has come through. So you can actually analyze the results as well of this card sort that we just built. Awesome. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and move forward. So while we're waiting for the results of this card sort, because I'm not expecting everybody to jump right on that immediately, let's take a look at a different example of a completed card sort and how the analytics can help you make strong decisions. And while I'm pulling that up, I do see a question in the chat. It says, from Marcella, how does it look like from the user POV and mobile devices? So at this time, we can only require that users do this on desktop. We don't have the ability to do it on mobile devices right now. So the user will be instructed to do this on a desktop computer. But great question. Okay. So let's take a look at this card sort that has been completed. So this is a card sort that I created recently. The participants were given a list of cards containing items that would be frequently found in grocery stores. So for example, apples, bananas, pizzas, peanut butter, cheese, things like that. And I asked participants to sort the cards into categories like they were putting items into the respective aisles of a grocery store. So I can click on the participants tab here and I can actually view the various participants' answers to the card sort here. So, for example, Milo had, the fruit was apples, oranges, and bananas, and he sorted tortillas and sandwiches into the deli, things like that. So, I can go ahead and view the results on an individual basis. However, as you can probably tell, it's not super helpful to look at each individual's responses to a card sort because you are only getting that one person's perspective. It can be very helpful. However, the more useful information in a card sort is probably going to be coming from the all of the information here together in one. So let's go ahead and click on the analytics tab to kind of dig deeper into those results. So, the analytics provided after a study is completed can help guide you into making changes to your navigation flow. And we break them down into a few different views that all have their respective benefits. So the first view that you can see here on the page is we can look at the cards themselves and drill down into each item individually and where they were most frequently sorted. So you'll see, for example, birdseed was only sorted into one category, pet. And you can see the frequency was 100% of users. We had 12 participants in this case. So you'll see that here. However, tomatoes was actually split between both vegetables and fruit. So this was a really interesting breakdown. You can see 9 participants said vegetables, 3 participants said fruit. So the majority did say vegetables, but that does give me kind of an indication of how somebody interpreted this card differently. You can see cards like, for example, potato chips, snacks, that was pretty much frequently used. But then there's also cards, for example, like waffles, which is broken down literally 50-50 between breakfast and frozen. There's even categories like salsa, for example, that is in a whole bunch of different categories that people chose out of the list here. So this is a really great way to see how people interpreted cards and how they understood the assignment that they were given as well. Next, we can dig deeper into the categories themselves by clicking categories here. And you'll be able to see in each category how frequently certain cards were sorted into them. Now, you'll notice with a hybrid or an open card sort that as we scroll through here, especially when we get to the end, there will be a lot of different terminology that participants may use for the same thing. So, for example, we had a card called wine that did not have a category assigned to it. So, every person kind of chose a different option. So, alcohol was used frequently, beer and wine, beverage, wine and spirits, liquor, people may have spelled the word wrong, things like that. So you'll notice that there are a lot of similarities in the categories, but just maybe have a different term for the way somebody interprets that. So, in order to kind of help your results make more sense and help your data make more sense as you're looking through this, you can select all the options here. So, we're going to go ahead and click all of these. And I'll also click, I think there were a couple here. Yeah, drinks and beverages. There's another one. So we'll collapse all of these together. So at the very top, you'll see merge categories, and you'll see all of my different categories here, and we'll name them one major thing. So we'll call it alcohol because that seems to be the most frequently used one here. And I'll merge my categories together. So now when I scroll down my list, all of those have disappeared. However, I can see my merged category and everything will be collapsed together. So you can see now that the data actually makes a little bit more sense because everything has been pushed together. But upon doing this, you can now see that we have wine here, but we also have a couple of other things that were sorted into this category. So maybe I want to unmerge this and kind of make it a little bit more specific to make sure that my data is making sense. So let's go ahead and unmerge this category. I just selected it just the same as before, went right back up to the top and click unmerge. Now all my categories are separated out again, and maybe I just want to click the ones that were related to alcohol together. We're going to leave beverage because that seems to be something a little bit different, and drinks also is something a little bit different. So we're just going to say the ones that have alcohol, for example, we're going to merge those together under alcohol. And then we'll take the ones that say beverages, for example, and drinks, which are a little bit more general, and we'll merge those together. So that way my data is a little bit more accurate. Now when I look at my beverages, I do see that wine was sorted into this category, but I can also see that there were other options here as well versus my alcohol category. I can see how people sorted into this one as well. So this will make your data more accurate, and it'll also allow you to look at different options that people chose for your different categories as well. I also like to use looking at categories in this way to see inspiration for how people name categories as well. So maybe I was thinking like alcohol makes sense, but I did see somebody put wine and spirits. That's a different option that might be more useful for my audience. So this is a great way to kind of look at different options and have inspiration for your own navigation flow as well. So an even better way to look at the data as a whole is through something called the merged matrix. So this view shows me all of the cards here on the left-hand side and the categories at the top. So I can see a top-down view of how often the various cards were sorted into each category. And you'll notice that there's some colors here. So the darker the color, the more often it was sorted into that category. So for example, cucumbers was sorted 11 out of 12 participants into the vegetables category. And if I scroll over, I can see that one person put it into the fruit category. So this is something that you'll be able to see quite uh, uh, quite obviously the ones that are very much ready to go. For example, crackers were 12 out of 12 in snacks. So I know for a fact that putting crackers in snacks makes sense. So I can start to make some real decisions on how I want things to be sorted by looking at this merged matrix. Potato chips and snacks automatically. Sandwiches was sorted into deli nearly the 100% of the time. So I know for a fact that that would make sense for my audience, and soup and canned goods, for example. But as I'm going through this, you'll also notice areas where things were not quite as clear, like jelly for or medicine, for example, was in households 6 different times, but a lot of different people saw it as pharmacy. They created categories like health and wellness and other things like that. You'll also see categories like eggs, for example. 8 people sorted it into dairy and 4 people sorted it into breakfast, which is not a substantially low number of people to sort into a different category. So there will be situations where this might not be as clear. I think I mentioned one before, which was waffles, was split 50-50 between frozen and breakfast. So this is an one that might be a little bit more difficult to choose where you want to put it. So, how do I choose the correct category if people were split on it? And that can actually be answered by the third type of analytics, which is the similarity matrix. So, this graph is a little bit less about the categories and more about how cards were grouped together. So, the closer in proximity, the more often they were grouped in the same category. And the further away they are, the less likely they were grouped together. So, for example, toothbrushes and soup were never grouped together. Hopefully, thankfully not grouped together. So you can see patterns emerge that are not as clear in the previous analytics that make those harder to sort cards easier to visualize. So, to put in a good example of this, you can see tomatoes, for example, is one that was sort of split on our audiences. People thought it was fruit. People also looked at it as a vegetable and things like that. So when I'm trying to make my decision, it's not very clear where I should put this. Now, when I look at this graph, I can see that tomatoes were sorted together with apples and oranges. 25% of participants sorted those together. But with cucumbers, 66 participants sorted tomatoes and cucumbers together. So I can safely say if cucumbers are in a category, I could probably put tomatoes with them, and that would be very clear. Another great example is you can see here that banana chips and tortilla chips and potato chips were sorted fairly frequently together. I if I wasn't really sure, banana chips might be interpreted as something in like the bulk section or in the fruit and vegetable section. So maybe I want to see how these correlate, and I can see, they were sorted together pretty frequently with bananas, but they were also sorted very frequently with the snacks. So I know, okay, banana chips are seen more as a snack in this case, so I'm gonna put them with the other snacks that are closely related to that. So this graph here is actually going to be dynamic. So you can hover over something and see the direct correlation between the two studies. So for example, sandwiches and banana chips were grouped together 0% of the time. That pretty much makes sense. But you can also see things like here, salsa and tortilla chips, which are two things that probably go together very well, were grouped together by 25% of participants. So they were in the same category together pretty frequently for at least 3 of the participants. So you can really get an idea of how often these cards are going together. And then you can also see, I mean, even looking at this graph, you'll be able to see the ones that are pretty frequently grouped together will be in their own little triangle here. So you can see, for example, paper plates, medicine, shampoo, hand soap. These were all kind of a toss up. We had a couple of categories that these could have fallen under, but you can also see they relate together pretty frequently enough that we might be able to make a decision based off of just seeing it like this. We also have an option called the dendrogram, which is actually the same information, just presented in a different way. So, very similarly to the similarity matrix, you'll see the further away the cards are from each other, the least likely they are sorted together. And then the closer they are, the more often they were sorted together. For example, paper plates and mops were almost always sorted in the same category together. And birdseed and cat litter, for example, also sorted together. And then you'll be able to see things like sandwiches and soup, which may have had some differences from each other uh, in different categories that are not as close together as the others. So, with just this card sort and the information I just showed you, I now have an idea of what types of categories I want to include, where people sorted those things that make sense, and how they relate to each other in a way that I can make broad decisions about my navigation flow. And even ones, like I mentioned before, that are a little more unclear to find, I have an idea of how I can sort them just based off of the data that we can see here. This is a great starting point for me to start working on my navigation flow now. And I can always run another card sort further along in the process if I want to add more items to be sorted or check and make sure that the process works. So, while most researchers use card sorts to work on navigation, there are also many instances where card sorts can be used creatively, even within your team. So, I'm going to show you just an example of one that I think is really interesting. So, we have seen some researchers use closed card sorts as a ranking system, and this is both internally as well as externally. So, for an example, I created this kind of basic option that you can see. So we have a closed card sort, and there are two different ways that people utilize this. So first, within their team, they might create a card sort to sort initiatives that are coming up in the near months. So let's say, we have initiative 1 improving the homepage or initiative 2 building the Chrome extension. Maybe they want people to sort them by most important or least important to them. So you can send out a card sort within your team to do sort of a ranking of which initiatives are the ones that we should work on next. Alternatively, we've also seen people use this as a marketing tool. So maybe somebody's creating a new marketing email and they want to get an idea of what people like to see when they open an email like that. So maybe they want to rank things like product updates or how to guides. So they'll create a card sort with all different cards of different sections of an email and then ask people to sort them between most important and not as important to them. So these are great ways to utilize card sort that are totally separated from the navigation flow. And I know that there are many, many other ways that you can use card sorts in the future. Feel free to let us know if you come up with a new one. We're always interested to hear creative ideas for using card sorts. And finally, before we move forward, I also wanted to mention tree testing, which can be a great follow up test to run after a card sort in the later stages of development. We do offer tree testing as a methodology, and the way it works is you build a navigation tree and provide the participant with tasks to see if they can find the correct answer. And this helps ensure that users are understanding the flow of your site. So, in the example you can see here, imagine you'd purchase a new outfit for a winter party. Where would you go to search for that new outfit? And we test on how people click on the navigation flow and what answer they come to. If you ever have questions about tree testing, are interested in setting up a tree test, feel free to reach out to our team and we're more than happy to provide some information for you on that. So now that you've gotten a taste of card sorting, let this test unlock that navigation structure for you. I hope that this is useful for your research and happy testing, everybody. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you all for attending today. And before we open up for some QA questions, I want to thank you so much for being here. We are at Playbook UX are working hard to make sure that your user testing and research is as optimal as it can be. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We have our chat support team available with the blue circle in the bottom right corner of every page of Playbook UX. And we're more than happy to assist you with questions, feature requests, and things like that. But now I'll go ahead and take any questions that you might have. I'll stick around for a few extra minutes. But if you are leaving this stream, thank you again so much for attending. Please feel free to give us feedback on these webinars. If you ever have ideas for future webinars or questions that come up out of this, we love to hear feedback on this. So please feel free to reach out to us anytime. But thank you so much for your time today. And hopefully, I'll see some card sorts out there in the near future. Awesome. Let's see here. So Mariano asked, do you recommend using a card sort to know if the end user understands the meaning of different naming of category and how the user interprets the copy? Yeah, so I think that's a great use case for this. And this would be something that I would recommend using an closed card sort for or a hybrid card sort. So you can ask people to sort into the categories that you define, and if you wanted to do a closed card sort, you can have it be just the categories that you are offering and see if people sort them kind of correctly in that way. Hybrid does allow them to create categories, so that way is a good it's kind of a good way to test and make sure that your categories are working if they don't create extra ones, if that makes sense. Um, I think also if you I would also recommend doing a tree test for this. So for the example I showed before, you would be able to set up your navigation flow pretty easily by, separating out the different branches as the different categories for your website and then testing to see if people can find those things within your structure. So this is really great for late stage development. You're just trying to test to make sure that it works. This is a really great test for that. Tree testing is awesome option for that. And Mariano, if you ever have questions about that, definitely reach out to us. We can absolutely go through that. We also have some demo videos on tree testing, as well as a demo tree test for you to take on our website that you can definitely see how the participants go through the flow. Hopefully that answers your question. Let me know if you have any additional follow ups on that too. Oh, no problem. I'm glad it worked. I'll close off my video here. We'll leave this going for a couple extra minutes too. If anybody has any questions in the chat, definitely let us know. We also have some great example videos of card sorting too on our website that you can view how to set this up. We have a ton of help center articles on that as well, but there are some practice card sorts that are separate from the one we created today that you can definitely take already available right now. And we also have some ones with analytics that you can view after the fact too, which is really great. But I'll make sure to post the analytics for this specific card sort for you as well, so you can see the results after after our creation. Thanks, Maria. Thank you for attending. Thanks, Mariano. Thank you so much for attending. If you're a user of Playbook UX and you have feedback for us, we would greatly love if you would consider leaving a review on G2. We are always happy to help provide a link to that if you're ever interested. But any feedback for us is super helpful. We want to make as much improvements to the site to make it as usable as possible for everyone. So definitely feel free to drop us a line, and if you feel inclined to, definitely leave us a review on G2 if possible. That would be lovely. But we are so appreciative of you even joining us today and for you using the platform if you are a regular user. Thank you so much. Thanks, Gonzalo. Thanks, Maximiliano. Appreciate you. We'll go ahead and close this out here momentarily, but like I said before, we'll be sending this out after the fact, so you'll have access to this live stream once this has concluded. And we'll also be uploading this to our YouTube channel. So definitely check us out on YouTube. We've got a lot of really great, helpful videos about research, as well as our previous webinar on tagging is available currently. So feel free to go over to our YouTube channel, just Playbook UX, and we are more than happy to provide a link to that if you would like access to that as well. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. If you do have any last minute questions, definitely feel free to reach out to us. But thank you again, all of you, for attending today. We're so happy to see you. I hope this was helpful and I appreciate your time. And I hope you all have a lovely weekend. Get some sunshine if you have it, stay inside if you don't. And we hope you have a wonderful time. Thank you again, everybody. Have a great day. Bye bye.